From Boston, Crockett's Victory Garden.
Welcome to Crockett's Victory Garden. I'm Jim Crockett, and I guess right away you can see that I'm not in Crockett's Victory Garden. Actually, I'm at a suburban location, suburb of Boston, where we have a very old home that had a new addition built on it last winter. And of course, with that sort of thing, we had concrete trucks, lumber trucks, the construction workers' vehicles parked all over this area, which used to be a nice lawn. Well, this seems to be the kind of a thing which a lot of people have been asking for. How do you set up a good lawn? The time of the year to do it is in September or early fall at least, when the fall rains come. It takes a lot of the onus out of watering. Also, I should remind you that in the fall, the annual weeds might come up for a few inches, then the frost gets them. The crabgrass won't bother you in the fall, so this is the ideal time to start a lawn from seed. Well, now we've been doing a lot of work here, and I want you to see that we have sort of the lawn in a number of stages of building. This particular section right over in here, everything is all ready. We're ready to sow the seed on it. Everything is in the soil. Now over in here we have a section where we have graded it, but we haven't put in our peat moss or lime and things of that nature. And over in here, this is what we started with. Not exactly. It looks as though it might be what we started with, but actually this was a field of crabgrass. We had a very heavy tractor come in here and dig this whole area up. It doesn't do the whole job. This soil, as you can see, is still very, very hard. The reason is we have been walking on here, but it shouldn't have made it so firm. There's no great amount of organic matter in this soil, practically none to speak of. What I'm going to do is now, I want to point out to you that you see well, we have all of these rocks and debris in here. We have low places. You can see here, you can see right underneath my rake. High place there, high place here, low place in between. Well, we're going to get rid of some of these rocks. Get some of this out of the way. This seems to be the best crop around on this lawn has been rocks so far. And we're going to rototill it with a lighter machine. Then we'll get ready for some rough grading. So let's start right in here and we'll get this machine going and go across the lawn once or twice. Now we're not trying to go in too deeply on our first pass through. We will eventually go over this entire piece of ground. See these rocks we keep picking out? I certainly like to see a tiller of this type. I like the ones with the tines in the back so that we end up with a reasonably smooth piece of ground to work with. Well, okay, now we're ready to go. Now this is where we do the rough grading. And on the rough grading, of course, we want to get out the rocks. We want to fill in some of the low spots and cut off the high ones. Of course, you realize that this whole area will be dug over with a tractor. And we'll start to, you see these rocks that we're getting out of here. The worst are the roots, the grass, the pebbles. And we'd like to establish a grade, in this instance, which will come from right down in here, where you see we've already graded it. We'll have a gentle slope from there right up, so eventually we'll coincide with this lawn in the back. So there'll be one solid sweep of lawn through here without a lot of high places and low places. Not too difficult to do. If you don't own a tiller such as this, remember that you can always rent one, and it certainly takes the back-breaking job out of ground tilling. And I must tell you that this, as far as I'm concerned, this is the way to do it. So we've gotten the rough debris out. We'll give this a rough grading to establish what we want. Now let's go across here, and we'll talk about how to improve the soil. But before I do that, we want to know in which direction do we want to improve it. Now we'll just look at the soil itself. This really is very good looking soil. Rich brown, I'd say that's a very rich sandy loam. The kind of a soil that any gardener would be happy to have. But there is no way by looking to tell whether this soil is acid or sweet. Now in order to have a good lawn, the soil pH must be very close to neutral, maybe 6.5 to 7. And when a lawn tests 7, it is neither acid nor alkaline. It's just at that nice point that grass is like. By the way, when you take a soil sample, don't use your hands, because any perspiration or jelly or anything that you happen to have on your hands will affect the result. So you take this up with a clean trowel and make your soil test. Now we made a soil test here, and I'll let you see what we have. I don't know how well you can see this, but if you notice on the card, first of all, that we have, beginning up here with a yellow at the top, which is very acid, and then a light green as it becomes a little more alkaline, and a dark green, but all of those are very acid. Now, we made this little, I don't know how well you can see that, but there it is. As far as I can tell, it comes somewhere between 5 and 6, about 5.5. Well, I would like to boost that up to at least 6.5. So I'm going to put on lime. And this is ordinary ground limestone. I like to use the type which is called dolomite limestone. It has magnesium as well as calcium in it. And we're going to just start across here, move some of this equipment out of the way a bit. Now we're going to put the lime on here at the rate of 50 pounds to 100 square feet. Now this is a little windy day, but with this type of a spreader, for this operation, we get a minimum of loss of lime through blowing away. And you see how easy this is to do. It certainly beats spreading lime by hand. You can do it by hand, but we might as well do gardening the easy way. Again, if you don't have a spreader, you can rent a spreader. These kinds of things are for rent just about everywhere. Well, now we would like this lawn to be beautiful for 50 years maybe. If we're going to do that, we have to go right to the initial part of soil preparation. You know, I get so many questions on my program about why doesn't this grow, or why doesn't that grow? And so often I think, you know, I don't think that you were listening to the first lesson, which said soil preparation. Now I'm adding peat moss. I want to tell you now that I'm not going to be stingy about it. This is sphagnum peat moss. This is the kind that comes out of the sphagnum bogs up in the northern part of the country. This is acid, and that's one more reason that we need the lime, and we'll giving it a good amount of lime to counteract the acidity in the peat moss as well as the acidity in the soil itself. Now this will go on at the rate of maybe 2 inches or as much as 3 inches deep. And what the peat is going to do is to loosen up the soil to let the air into it, but better than that, it's going to act as a sponge. And as a sponge, it will hold moisture, and from the pocketbook point of view, it will also hold the fertilizer. The nutrients won't be apt to just drain out of the soil when you have a rain. So we begin by putting a good deal of peat on. This is the only chance you're going to have, you know. You can't go along digging up your lawn every few years to put more peat moss in it. Well, with the lime and the peat in, now we're going to start that tractor up again and work this material right into the soil. And that is the key to soil preparation. And I don't care whether you're raising winter squash or delphiniums or a lawn. So let's get this going and till this right in. See how that stuff is disappearing into the ground. Ordinarily, I wouldn't walk behind a tractor such as this because I want the soil to stay nice and fluffy. But here I'm going to compact it anyway so that we can make a good firm lawn out of it. One more sweep through and I'll show you what the next operation is. See how we're still pulling up rocks. Now comes the grading operation once more. We established our rough grade before. Now we're going to establish our final grade. We're working with something which is, you see, pretty fluffy. Make this about as smooth as I can to begin with. And then we come to the point of rolling it. And this is, see, we get these rocks. Now the roller that I'm going to use is one which holds water, but I've taken all the water out of this because I don't need a heavy roller at all. Rolling the lawn should not be a hard operation when you are doing this, even though the soil is soft. As a matter of fact, if this roller were full of water, you'd have a hard time pulling it across this kind of an operation. Now you see what we have after having raked it across. You can see here are footprints here. There's a high place over there. There's a low place in between here. Another low place there. So we go right across it now. And we take care of any of these as we possibly can. Notice too that we'd like this to be so firm when I'm all through, ready to sow the seed, that I could walk on it and you would hardly find my footprints, which you can do here. But just in the process of walking back and forth, raking it, I am firming the soil as I go. Now the soil can't become compacted, excuse me, as long as all this peat moss is in it. But we don't want it to show every dog track later on. So now we're ready. That's what we do. Now we've done the same operation over here, and now we're ready to put the fertilizer on. And you can see how smooth that is. This is the fertilizer, a lawn fertilizer. which is high in nitrogen, medium in phosphorus, and low in potash for this part of the country. High in nitrogen because that's what grass needs to grow well. Wherever you live, the fertilizer may not be just exactly like this one, which is 10-6-4, but your local fertilizer manufacturers will have a lawn fertilizer keyed to your soil. Now we'll set this fertilizer on and go right across this area. Not going on very thickly, but we don't need all of that much on it to begin with. Okay, now we will rake this once more. What I want to do is to barely work this fertilizer in here. Then we'll be ready to put on the grass seed. Now, the beautiful thing about using a lawn fertilizer, which is an organic fertilizer, even though it's a synthetic organic, is that we can sow our seed in the very same day that we do all of these other operations, including putting on the fertilizer. Well, now having established a pretty good grade and mixed the fertilizer in, we're ready to put on the grass seed. I have a little trick on putting on the grass seed, which you might remember whenever you feed a lawn too. If you take your grass seed, so you need 5 pounds for a certain area, divide your grass seed into 2 equal amounts. Set your spreader accordingly. And on one, you might say north and south. You go like this, back and forth in this direction. We'll sow the grass seed on just as evenly as we can. Now, there's no way of being sure, even though I overlap it, that I'm getting a thorough coverage. So what do we do here? We turn around and we run the opposite direction at 90 degrees to the other one. Go right across here, turn around, we'll come right back this way. Now, this is when the entire amount of grass seed goes on the lawn, overlapping as we go in both directions. Well, you get that idea, I'm sure. I'll put that to one side. And now comes, I want to stop for just a minute and talk to you about the grass seed that I'm using here. I want this new lawn and the old lawn to blend. Well, I came out here and found out that this lawn has a mixture of Kentucky bluegrass and fescue. So my seed is exactly the same thing. The Kentucky bluegrass will grow beautifully in the sunshine. The fescue will grow in either sun or shade. So this is, so next spring or next year this time, someone could look at this lawn and it would all appear to have been put in at the same time. Now my trick. You see what this is? A welcome mat without the welcome. This type of thing, and we're going to put that seed barely underground. Just drag this across the soil like that. And you can see how that levels out the imperfections. It barely covers the seed. Now, I really don't want the grass seed to go in very deeply. I would say 1/8 of an inch is ample. In nature, the grass seed certainly wouldn't go in that deep, if at all. So this makes a homemade gadget that you can put it's the last sweep through, with the exception of the rolling. Again, a light roller. We will now get this seed and the soil in very firm contact with one another. Now, while you're at it, If you look over here and you can see my footprints, remember I said that I wanted to barely see my footprints. Well, you can just see partial outlines along there. So this soil is as firm as I want it to be. Now when we finish rolling this, the only last thing to do is to give it a drink of water. And of course, once you give it a drink of water, you're going to have to be sure that that soil stays moist from that time forward. Well, we have a sprinkler set up here. Just turn it on to give you an idea of what we're talking about. Now this is one of these oscillating types. It'll come up to the upright position and then go back again. And we will have to keep this soil moist from this time forward, because this is the critical stage in the life of any kind of a seed. Well, that's not the only kind of a problem that you may have when you're putting in a lawn. Now you might have a bank such as this one, which is sloping up from the deck. A very difficult position to make grass to grow, because you could get a good stout thunderstorm and lose it all. Well, what I have here, just a piece of sod. It's a very inexpensive way to put in a lawn is to use sod. It is absolutely essential that you prepare the soil as thoroughly when you're putting in sod as when you're putting in seed, because the roots are going to have to feed in that same piece of ground. Now I have a high spot there. Just use your spade, back of the spade like that. Now right in here, you see where the two strips have joined together. Well, now that I will run another strip up here, but you see I will overlap this as though I were laying bricks, and that means that any water which started to go down would hit the solid barrier here and not run and make a gully in between. Simply tap that down rather firmly. Of course, when you put in sod, you're going to have to wet it down. Within 2 days' time, that sod will begin to grow right down into the soil beneath. Now, with your other problems, suppose you have a great big bank and you just don't want to go to the trouble of sodding it. You have to go to the trouble of putting in the seed, but what I'm going to do for this bank, it's an old-fashioned remedy for that kind of a problem. This happens to be old tobacco netting, used tobacco netting. We're going to spread this right across the top of the area, which has been seeded and rolled and fertilized, and down we go with it. Spread it right across here. See, it's not that difficult. Even on a windy day, this is lying down pretty well. And what we do here, we have a few pins that we've made out of some coat hangers, something which will rust away in the soil and never see them again. Push them down, and those, of course, will stay on the lawn. This netting will stay on the lawn, and the grass will grow right up through it, and you'll never see it. Well, let's see if we can get to a couple of questions. There's a lot to do on a day such as this with putting in a lawn. That's why we say you don't attack this kind of a job unless you really need to. A question about lawns from Rensselaer, New York. Will you please advise how to eradicate a juga that has seeded itself in our back lawn? Any broadleaf weed is susceptible to a weed killer called 2,4-D. And believe me, I use any herbicide with great caution. I would try pulling the ajuga out. I would try spot eradication before I would give it a blanket application. Also, do it on a day with no wind, because every other plant in your garden, which is a broadleaf plant, I don't care if you're talking about a delphinium or an elm tree or what, will be killed just as quickly as the ajuga will. Another one about lawns. What is snow mold and how can I cope with it? Well, snow mold is a fungus disease which attacks the lawn during the wintertime under the snow. It gets in usually a thick thatch of grass, spreads on and on. In the spring, the rest of the lawn comes up green, and those ugly patches. The best way to do it without any chemical at all is to mow your lawn very, very closely the last thing in the fall, and then rake up all of those clippings so that the lawn goes through the winter rather bare. It won't hurt the lawn a bit, but you will get away from having those disease problems. From Palmyra, Pennsylvania. Since it's time to be buying bulbs from the catalogs, I'm uncertain as to what constitutes a blooming size bulb. Well, now the word that you want to look for is called top size. And this is a top size tulip bulb. It's firm. The size itself will vary according to the variety. Some are larger than others and still a top size. So what it finally comes down to is be sure that you deal with a reputable person. And if you see 100 bulbs for a small amount of money and a dozen bulbs over here for the same amount of money, buy your dozen because you'll get a dozen blossoms. If you buy your 100, I'll be willing to bet you a nickel you wouldn't get 1 or 2 blossoms. So get the good ones, the biggest, and they're called top size. Another bulb question from Illinois. We are going to be moving to the Mid-East Wisconsin in February. How can we take our bulbs with us? Well, I would say don't plant them. Pray that you're going to have an open winter and get them in the ground. I've even known people to plant them in the spring and get by with it, providing they've been kept cool. From Haverhill, Mass. My asparagus has been in about 5 years. I have 25 plants, still don't get much from it. What should I put on it this fall? Well, I bet you didn't prepare the soil right in the first place with a lot of compost under it. So the best thing you can do is to put compost or horse manure or cow manure on the bed this fall, and that will help it. Well, that's all we have time for this week. Next week, we're going to be restoring an old perennial garden. And let me say that just as lawns should be done in the fall, so should perennial gardens be planted in the fall. I'm Jim Crockett in Crockett's Victory Garden. I hope you enjoy the program every week.